Good morning, good afternoon. Let's continue on with our human population notes. So the next thing we're going to look at is what's called demographic transition. So this image is showing you how a country progresses from a developing country to a developed country. We're going to talk about what each one of these stages is and what happens in that stage, and then look at some specific examples of countries that fall into each one of these categories. So as you can see, it's basically a graph. So we have our growth rate, so that's human population, and then time. So you can see we're looking at the population, the birth rate, and the death rate. They're going to both go through some drastic changes as time progresses. And it depends on how long this takes. It could take anywhere from several decades to several hundred years for this to happen. It just depends on the resources that the country has available to it. Okay, so let's go ahead and write down the definition of demographic transition. All right. Oh, I still have it on my Zoom. There we go. Okay. So, demographic transition. Now, remember that demographic or demography means the study of human populations. So this is going to be the transition of population growth. Okay? So demographic transition refers to the transition sorry y'all, my writing is looking pretty rough right now. It's a transition from higher to lower birth and death rates. So it's a transition from higher to lower birth and death rates as development occurs. So again, we're looking at the process a country goes through in shifting from developing to a developed country. Okay, so we're going to look at this stage by stage. And I want you to keep in mind that every single country will progress through each one of these stages. Okay, so the pre-industrial stage is the first stage. The pre-industrial stage is also called phase 1. Okay? Phase 1, pre-industrial. So when we look at this, we can see that birth rate and death rate are both high. So this is typically going to be a country that does not have a tremendous amount of health care available. And as you can see, the population is going to remain relatively stable because both the birth and the death rate are high. All right, so I'm going to scoot this down a little bit. So underneath, right here for phase 1, let's write a description. Okay, so we know we have slow population growth. Okay, and that's because birth and death rates are high. The population doesn't really have a chance to grow if both of your birth and death rates are high. Okay, this right here is most of the world before the Industrial Revolution. You guys learned about the Industrial Revolution in your history class. So this is where most of the world falls. So most of the world before the Industrial revolution. Okay, so an example of a country that is still in this phase is Niger. So Niger is going to be a country in Africa. And if you look at the population pyramid, and we just went over this in our last set of notes, you can see that it has a very broad base. Okay? Now, if you reference what we just learned about, what kind of population growth is Niger experiencing? The key is look at the base. Is it broad? Is it small? This is obviously broad, so Niger is going to be experiencing rapid or exponential growth. Oh no, where did my marker go? There we go. So this is going to be a rapid growth. Okay? Now, when we transition into the next phase, so the next phase is the transitional phase, also called phase 2. We see a big shift happen here. We see the birth rate is staying pretty constant, but our death rate has dropped. Okay? So the death rate has dropped drastically. And why? Because we have increases in, or betterment in, food production and medical care. So people are living longer and babies are staying alive. Okay? Now, another reason the birth rate is still high in this particular phase is because children are typically used as a workforce. So this is still not a completely developed country. Children equals workforce. Okay? So, right here we typically have what's called subsistence. A subsistence economy. Subsistence economy means farming. So, families have lots of kids to work on the farm. Okay? So right here, obviously because our birth rates are high, our death rate is low, we are going to have rapid population growth. So rapid population growth. Okay? Also, please keep in mind that this right here is referring to phase 2, transitional phase. Okay? This is explaining why we're having rapid population growth, as well as children being used as part of the workforce. Okay? An example, current day example of a country in this phase is Haiti. As you can see, Haiti also has a very broad base, but you can see that there are larger portions starting to increase at the top of the pyramid of the older age groups. So they are transitioning into a more developed country. Okay? All right. Our next phase is the industrial phase. This is where a lot of countries are currently before they become completely developed. All right, so the industrial stage is phase 3. All right, birth rates, right here. Birth rate declines due to increased opportunities for women and access to birth control. So you can see right here the the birth rate is decreasing drastically because women have more opportunities. We talked about in our last section of notes that when women have access to higher education and are able to work outside the home and have access to family planning, the birth rates decrease. So, in phase 3, we're also going to start seeing improved economic conditions. So the country is gaining more wealth. Okay. This is where most countries are today. Okay. So an example is Morocco. Morocco's not a country we hear about very often, but look at how the population pyramid has shifted here. Okay. It is still somewhat broad at the base, but you can see we're starting to have more of an equal distribution. So our population is slowing down. Or our population growth is slowing down. Sorry, guys. Slowing down. Okay. Now, the last phase, the technical last phase, is phase 4, which is the post-industrial stage. Okay. Right here, we have very low birth and death rates. So what is happening in stage 4, where's my little marker? There we go. What's happening in stage 4 is our population is stabilizing. Okay, so we also have continued access to family planning and increased opportunities for women, which is also going to contribute to phase 4 as well. Where we also have better health care. Okay. Most of women are part of the workforce, so women are working and choosing to delay having children. So this is going to be most developed countries in the world. Mostly developed countries. Okay, so an example is obviously going to be the United States. You can start to see we have in this particular area right here, we have people living longer because we have better health care. We have less, right here, less children than we do adults, again, because women make those decisions now. And so this right here is what we call stable population growth. Okay. Now, there is what we call a theoretical phase 5. Okay. So that's what this graph is down here. So we have theoretical phase 5. And phase 5 means we have 0 growth, meaning that the population is not increasing at all. It also could be decreasing. So decreased population, meaning that we now have more older people, more people past the reproductive phase than we do younger people. So look, right here, Italy is a great example of this. Most of their population, if you look at this, is older. So this is kind of like what we call top heavy. Okay, there's a greater percentage of your population at the top. Another example of this is going to be Japan and Germany. These are all in stage 5. All right. So let me know if you guys have any questions to help you understand.